Hi, it's Penny Black and Jill Foster here for another PB&J card class. And in today's video, it's actually the first in a series of 4 videos featuring this adorable snowman creative die. This is 51566 Happy Snowy, and you can see here I've made 4 cards with lots of different ways to use this snowman. I just loved him so much that I had to make a bunch of cards with him. And here's a look at the card that we will be creating today, this Holly Jolly Pear. And before we begin, I just want to mention I will have a full supply list of all the supplies that I'm using at the very end of the video up on screen. And here's a look at this creative die set called Happy Snowy. I just love it, all of the different ways you can use the snowman. You get the hat, the little nose, a little bird, the little sign that can hang around his neck, and a bow that you can use to add to the top if you want. And then also this miniature transparent set, Seasonal Signs, has sentiments that will fit on the little sign that goes around the snowman. So you get a look at that in this card today. So I have die cut all of my pieces from Canson 140-pound watercolor paper, and I'm just stamping them here in my Misty Stamp Positioning tool. And I'm using an archival ink here to stamp on this bow. So you can see that the bow actually coordinates. This is from the Seasonal Sign set, and it's an exact match. And it coordinates with the die cut that comes with the snowman. Usually I stamp first and then die cut, but I wasn't planning on stamping and changed my mind, so I just went ahead and just lined it up and did the stamping. So I've got that stamped. Now up above that you'll see what looks like 2 little rectangles, but those are actually the little signs that hang around their necks. And so I am going to just look through these different sentiments here and find the ones that I decide on. I'm just playing around with some different ideas. Um, I was going to do Happy Holidays, but I decided to go with Holly Jolly, just something a little bit cheerful to go with the design of the snowman. I guess the snowman and the snow girl. And these I'm going to emboss. So I'm just positioning them here onto that die cut piece. And then I will rub an anti-static bag over the top of those pieces of paper. That's just to keep the embossing powder where I stamp and not where I don't want it to be. And I'm going to ink these up with Versamark ink. And I will stamp them just a couple of times because I'm stamping onto that watercolor paper, and it has just a little bit of a texture to it. And I'm just making sure here that I get that entire stamped impression. And then I will sprinkle these with white embossing powder and then go ahead and heat to set. Now another creative die set that I'm incorporating with this card and one of the other cards is our Sled and Skis creative die set, and on this one I will be using the skis, and you'll see that in just a moment here. So now I have all of my die cut pieces, and I am actually working here on a new tool for me. This is the Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station, and you can use these great magnetic pieces to hold things in place. There's lots of different things you can do with this tool, and I'm going to put a link to a video by Wendy Vecchi that describes it in more detail, but I have found it really handy for painting all of these really small die cuts. So I just put them onto pieces of painter's tape, and then I hold that down using the magnets. I put a piece of scratch paper underneath, and then I can just easily paint these and they stay right in place while I'm painting. Now to paint these I am using Distress ink re-inkers used as watercolors, and you can see there I just put them onto a palette, and I'm picking them up with my paintbrush and some water, and I'm going to go ahead and paint these in. Now you could certainly die cut these pieces from colored cardstock. You could paint them with any type of watercolors you have that you prefer. You could use your ink blending tools to apply inks. I love to paint, and I also really love the vibrancy I can get by using the Distress ink re-inkers like a watercolor. So for the Snow Girl, I'm doing some pinks and reds for the hat and the sign and the bow. And I will have all of those exact colors listed at the very end of the video up on screen within that supply list. There you can see that stamped and embossed sentiment, and that will resist these inks. And I'm just kind of playing around here with where I want the dark, just to be a little bit darker around the edges of the sign and lighter towards the center. Another thing I really love about using watercolor paper and painting with these die cuts is it just gives them a little bit extra thickness. And with the card, it's just something about that just feels a little bit extra special. It has an artistic look and feel to it. So I definitely recommend, if you haven't tried this before, to give it a try. It's also really handy if you're mass producing cards or you're not sure exactly what direction you want to go with your card when you first get, say, like a new die set. You can just sit and cut them all, cut out a whole bunch just from this one white watercolor paper, and then later go in and decide what colors you want to do and what direction you want to take your design. I often just sit and cut a whole bunch of new dies, and then I keep them just in just little basic envelopes, and they're ready to go whenever I'm ready to use them on a card. So you can see there I painted the second sign and hat with some reds and some oranges. And these little snowmen, they look so silly without the noses on there. So when you first get yours, do not be scared when you first go to paint them or go to work with them. Once the nose goes on, they're total cuteness. But without the noses, for some reason, they just look a little crazy. I'm just adding a very light layer of paint on the eyes and the mouth area just to accent those a little bit more. Blending it out with water so it's just very, very light. And just a touch of blush to their cheeks, so just a little light pink paint there. And then next I'll go ahead and paint the skis. And you can see here by using this Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station tool that has the magnetic surface, and these magnets are great because they don't snap your fingers, and it's foam on the bottom, so it's really easy to remove them. Nothing sticks with that painter's tape there. It is so easy to paint these really delicate, like these skis and the little pieces that go on them, to paint these and do shading on these delicate pieces. You can also very easily set the whole piece or the whole station aside to let things dry, or you can use your heat gun and just dry them while they're right on there without them blowing all over the place from the heat tool. So I set those aside to dry, and this is a piece of the same Canson 140-pound watercolor paper. This is the size of an A2 card, so 4¼ by 5½, and I'm just working on my background here. So I am painting on some peeled paint Distress Ink Re-Inker mixed with water. I want it to be a little bit darker at the bottom and lighter towards the top, so I'm just using more water as I move up towards the top of that panel. I'm not worried about the very bottom of that because I have just hand trimmed a little snowy hill there. And now I'm going to stamp this background using our Glisten Cling Stamp. I love this tree. I think it's a really great combination with the snowman. Now for this I wanted to leave off the star. It was just a little bit too big for the area that I was stamping. So I'm just covering that up with a piece of painter's tape while I apply my ink, and then removing that painter's tape when I go to stamp. Now I am stamping this using Fern Green Archival ink. It's a really nice match in color for that background that I painted. I'm stamping it a few times just to darken it up. So I like to start with a lighter color ink, and then if I want to or need to, I can do a couple of impressions just to darken it up rather than going too dark right at the beginning. Now I'm also going to do a little painting right on top of this tree. So that's archival ink. It's waterproof that I stamped it with. So now I can paint right on top of it, and my stamping underneath is not going to bleed or blend, and the detail will remain. So I'm just using that same peeled paint ink. That's what I use to paint the background, and just adding a little touch of that here and there on the tree, just so it stands out a little bit more from the background and so that it also keeps with that hand painted look that we've done with the die cuts and also the background. So we'll just finish this up here. Now I went ahead and dried that, and once I was done, I started thinking, I think I want there to be just a little bit more blue to the sky, a little more variation. So I am just dropping in a little bit more paint just around the tree and blending that in. Now that blue is going to mix with the green that's already there and get this really nice, beautiful turquoise color. So I'm just putting on a touch of that Distress Reinker used as watercolor and just painting that onto the background. And like I said, all of the exact colors are listed on screen at the very end of the video. I start light and then go in and darken it up as I go. And I was really much happier with this background once I added the blue. I felt like it made the tree pop a little bit more and just added an overall more of a magical feeling to the scene. So I'm going to go ahead and dry that using my heat tool. Just making sure that's completely dry. And I'm going to use just a touch of that same blue right along the edge of this snowbank. And like I said, I just hand trimmed this from the Canson 140-pound watercolor paper. I put the ink down, then cleaned off my brush and blended that with water. And I also added a touch of that green so that it matched up with the sky. Here's just some really cheap acrylic paint, and I'm going to mix that with water, and I'm going to splatter this onto my background just to create some movement and some snowy, like a snowy background. Now, one thing I love when I do this, the more water I add to the acrylic paint, the more subtle the sort of snow will look in the background. And by adding some sort of brighter white snow and some more that blends more into the background, I think it adds a lot of depth to the scene. And hopefully that will make more sense when you see that up close. Now you could certainly put this in like a box when you went to splatter it so you didn't get as much all over your work surface. But I find if I just take a baby wipe right away afterward, then I can clean that up very easily. And then I'm also going to take a gel pen and add some more snow. So you get a lot of depth of areas of light and dark or sort of bright or softer snowflakes in the background. I went ahead and put that snowbank on using foam adhesive, and now I'm ready to put these adorable happy snowy die cuts together. I'm just going adding their nose, and you can already see them taking shape and looking so cute. And I'm just using some liquid glue to add all these pieces together first. And we'll add the bow here up on her hat. And here are these little signs. These are sized to perfectly fit like they're hanging, sort of hanging down around them. Something really cute, really fun, and different and unique. And I love that we have that miniature transparent set with those sentiment size to fit right on there. Sorry for my head there. I'm just peeking over to make sure I line everything up okay. I wanted her to hold one of the little birds. Now these birds are also included in the Creative Die set for the Happy Snowy set. So I've got one up on her hand and then one fitting right here on the sign. That kind of pulls together the two different colors used on each one. Now I'm ready to add them to the scene. So I'll use foam tape up at the top and then just liquid glue down at the bottom. So they will be sitting even with the snowbank but popped up in front of the tree. And this is our String of Stars creative die, and I actually just cut one little star off of this to add to the tree. I like that by doing this I have a star up there. I can pull up that orange yellow color that is used on their nose, and I also kind of pulls up that die cutting to the top and to the background of the scene and pulls it all together. Now I've got the skis here ready to go. And that's another thing that's really fun with these Happy Snowy set, the way that their arms are up. There's so many different things you can do with that. They could be holding up a banner with the sentiment. They can be holding hands like I did on the other one. She can have the little bird in her hand. They could be holding a wreath. There's just lots and lots of different ways that you can use them, which is why I had a lot of fun making 4 different cards featuring this same creative die set. And I'm ready to sort of glue these on here. There we go. Now I am working on just a panel of the watercolor paper, but once this is complete, then I can adhere it to a standard size note card, and I typically will do that using my foam adhesive, just so that if there's any areas that have warped just a little bit in that background, that will totally flatten it out so that the card is completely flat once it is added to the note card. Just making sure I've got those right where I want them. And I also added just several sequins up into the sky just to add to that magical sparkle of the snow falling down in the background. And you can get a better look at some of those here up in these close-up shots. So here's a look at that sky and the happy snowman's face, and another look at that finished card. I hope you enjoyed today's video and you'll stay tuned for the 3 more cards featuring this Happy Snowy creative die set. If you enjoyed today's video and are inspired, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also connect with Penny Black on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, as well as our website and blog, and I will link to all of those for you down in the YouTube description box below. And if you stay tuned, that complete supply list will be up here on screen in just a moment. Thanks for watching.